What's up, guys? Rick from DFS On Demand here with your preview for the John Deere Classic. A few housekeeping items to go over before we start. I've got some winners here. So gave away weekly memberships to DFS On Demand last week and previous weeks. The winners for those are Ruben Sanchez and Larry Bicicletas. So if I have not reached out to you, I will do my best if I have your contact information. If you won, shoot me an email through the site. We'll get you set up. We will do the same thing again this week. So I'll give you a free weekly membership to DFS On Demand. It gets you into the Slack channel. It gets you access to all of the tools. And I guess I'll say this because I had to answer this a couple times this week. DFS On Demand is my website. All the tools that you see in this video come from DFS On Demand. It's all there for you. So we'll clear that up. So ways to enter this week. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Much appreciated. Like the video and leave a comment of what you think the final winning score is going to be. How many under par? 5 under, 10 under. Spoiler alert, it's going to be a lot. Maybe start in the teens and the 20s. Let me know what you think the final score is going to be, so you can do that on YouTube or on iTunes or wherever else you can leave a rating and review. Leave a 5-star review and just a little comment, something you like about the show, and that will enter you in the draw as well. All right, enough housekeeping stuff. Let's get on to the John Deere Classic. All right, the JDC, John Deere Classic, TPC Deere Run. I guess a couple of things to note about the course. It's going to be super easy. It's always super soft, big, easy to hit fairways. One of the easiest fairways to hit on the PGA Tour. One of the easiest courses on the PGA Tour. I think there were only something like 3 or 4 courses last year that played easier. This is going to be a birdie fest. It's going to be another week where your guy might shoot 6 under on Saturday or 6 under on Friday and not make up that much ground on the field. A little frustrating. I don't really love these events, but at least we have a lot of course history to go off of. So we'll be able to look back at the course key stats. It is a par 71. It's going to be a lot of wedges, a lot of we're going to look for those second shot type players. But really, what defines the John Deere Classic is basically this field that we have here, or lack thereof, depending on how you want to look at this. You've got so many golfers that are either resting up for the Open Championship next week, or they have already gone over to Europe. They've gone across the pond, or they're playing in the Scottish Open this week, some combination of that. A lot of guys that are left behind are the ones that might not be qualified already for the Open Championship. They're just trying to play to get a lot of, whether it's more money or experience or whatever, it's going to be a much weaker field. So when you look at the 5 names over $10,000 and literally the 3 most expensive players are the 3 guys that turned pro like 4 starts ago. I've never seen anything like this. So Victor Hovland at 10,900 leads the way. Colin Morikawa, who I love, finished second last week, 10,700. And then your winner last week, Matthew Wolff, 10,005. It is very clear that these kids are all pretty studly. They've all looked really good. I mean, Matt Wolff, outside of the win, before the win last week, the 80th at the Travelers, which was an MDF, and then he missed the cut at the Rocket Mortgage, and we were like, wow, maybe this kid, it's 2 starts. It's going to take him a while. Boom, comes out, wins the 3M Open, and everybody shuts up for a while. So those, and then the round out the $10,000 level is Joaquin Niemann and Kevin Streelman. Quite frankly, I really don't know what to do up here in the 10,000s. I think it's a situation where you're going to have a lot of people jump on the 3 youngsters, which I think is fair. I mean, they're the odds on, they're not the odds on favorites to win. I think Morikawa is actually the favorite to win this. So if you look at it from a pure value standpoint, if you're looking at these 3 guys, I believe Morikawa is actually 16-1 to win this. Victor Hovland is like 18-1, and then Matt Wolff is he's actually in the 20s, believe it or not. So if you're looking for pure value, Morikawa is probably your guy, but we're splitting hairs here in the $10,000 range. I think Hovland is probably the much more consistent player. I think the other two are probably a bit more volatile. So depending on what you're looking to get into, that's how I would treat the upper $10,000 range. Now, with all that being said, I am probably going to start my lineups down in the $9,000 range, see if I can get some more balanced builds. I think there are some much better values down here. I think all the guys in the 10,000, or at least the top four, right? So Hovland, Morikawa, Wolff, and Neiman, they're going to be volatile. They're going to have their growing pains. They're all very young. They all have great skill sets. But I'm going to go just a little step lower because I think this is where you can find some guys. Sungjae Im at $9,700, had that rough stretch where he was playing every single week, missed the cut at the PGA, missed the cut at the Charles Schwab, 57th at the Memorial. Then he's really turned it on recently. 7th at the RBC, 21st at the Travelers, and 21st at the Rocket Mortgage, 15th at the 3M. He is the type of player that can make a ton of birdies, in a hurry. I think that he's the guy that if he gets hot enough, he can actually go out and win this type of event. And I imagine at 9,400, Brian Harman is going to be a name that you hear over and over and over again this week. It's early on Monday for me, so I don't know where the rest of the industry is at. Salaries probably came out 30 minutes ago, so I don't know where the rest of the industry is at. But Harman at $9,400 now has 2 top 8 finishes in his last 3 starts, an 8th at the Travelers, a 7th at the 3M. And he's played so he did not play here at John Deere last year, but 2 years ago he had a 10th place finish. He is a former winner back in 2014. Clearly, this is a spot where you're getting converging trends. So I do think that Brian Harman will be fairly popular, but probably for good reason at $9,400. Now, the 9,000 to like 8,500 range is one I really like, quite honestly. Start at $9,000, which, by the way, if we just would have ran back our lineup from maybe 2 weeks ago last week, we would have won all the money, right? We've been big on Wolff, his first 2 pro starts. We had Morikawa in our core along with Wolff. We had Wyndham Clark, I believe, in our core last week. All 3 of those guys, great finishes. We didn't have any of them. But that is kind of my segue to Wyndham Clark, who now, this is the 5th place last week at the 3M for him was the best finish of his career. And now he's got a 15th at the Travelers, a 17th at the RMC, Rocket Mortgage, a 5th at the 3M, and this is probably the weakest field out of any of them. Of course, you have to pay $9,000 for him. The last couple of weeks, we were paying like 68, 72, something like that. So he gets a pretty significant price increase, but he's hot right now. He's one of the hottest players in the field currently. Now, right below him, I think is an interesting pivot, or a guy, I mean, you can get both of these guys in the lineup, is Kevin Tway. So Tway is the mold of a really great skill set and a guy who's much more seasoned on tour. He's a bit more volatile. His range of outcomes is going to be larger than some of these other guys, maybe like, Kyle Stanley's kind of all over the place too. But just in general, Kevin Tway can go just like he did, right? 5th at the Travelers, missed the cut. 10th. Like he's just kind of all over the place. But he does have one decent finish. He's only played Deere Run twice, a 12th place finish 2 years ago, and he made the cut last year. So I think Tway is a little bit interesting there. And then you start getting into some specialists. So the 8,600, the 8,500, you have Ryan Palmer and Nate Lashley. So if you're looking for a second shot player, this is the cream of the crop in terms of strokes gained approach. We know that Lashley won 2 weeks ago, ended up missing the cut at the 3M. You can say, hey, the week after he wins an event, he was bound to miss the cut. You might not buy that he actually has the skill set to compete once again. But Palmer's interesting because we have not seen him since, I guess this is right, since the RBC. Finished 35th. The start before that was a 6th place finish at the Charles Schwab. So maybe he's just not playing. I have to look into it. Or if somebody knows, shout me out, tweet me, leave a comment. I don't know if he was hurt, if he withdrew. I have to look this up. His name's popping off for the first time on me. This is basically my first look at the field. So I want to take a deeper look at him. But a really solid approach player, gains tee to green, gains off the tee. gains putting, he would be probably just fine here. His weakness is around the greens, but quite honestly, you're gonna have to hit so many greens if you're needing to get up and down. If you're needing to do that, you're out of the tournament anyway. All right, and quick names here. I'll run through just a couple of quick names because I want to get to the course key stats because we've got it back this week. A couple of numbers that just kind of made me turn my head a little bit. JT Poston at $7,800. He's coming off a really good finish at the Rocket Mortgage. He has played well at times. Even Taylor Gooch, who has been Monday qualifying a lot recently, he's making cuts. He's only 7,700. There was someone else down here, I thought. Oh, even Troy Merritt coming off a 7th place finish. Harold Varner Jr., who has had a 6th place finish here last year. Again, sometimes you'll hear me talk about who amongst his peers, there's guys that are really seasoned PGA vets, and there's guys that are trying to figure it out as they go. Varner definitely falls into the former category, someone who plays on the tour a lot. He should probably not be $7,400 in this field. Let's jump over to the course key stats here because I'm so glad this is back with a couple of caveats. So if you've never seen this before, this is, and quite honestly, if you've started in the last couple of weeks, you haven't seen this because the 3M and the Rocket Mortgage Classic were brand new courses on the PGA Tour. So this is a regression model that I run each week, for each course that looks back at the last, I think I'm up to 12 now, 12 years of DraftKings scoring and PGA stats for that year. And it looks to see which type of player succeeded at each course. And it's a regression model. So there's correlation here. And then I list the players and their stats. So let's talk through this a little bit. So John Deere Classic, we have a lot of great course history. The highest correlated stats actually don't rank that highly. It's always, scoring average, strokes gained total, SDFA, putts over 10 feet, and strokes gained tee to green. You're going to be a big winner in a lot of places if you rank well in those stat categories, but none of them are ranked when you compare TPC Deere Run against the other courses on the tour. None of those stats that I just mentioned even crack the top 12 in terms of importance. So here are the most important stats. And I have a lot of thoughts about this. So the highest ranked stat is 3-putt avoidance, believe it or not. There are only 2 courses on the PGA Tour that 3-putt avoidance is more important than at Deere Run. Then you get birdie or better from 125 to 150 and birdie or better from under 125 yards. Driving accuracy shows up, and par 3 birdie or better shows up as well. So I took a few liberties here because some of these stats are a bit noisier than others. So here's what I narrowed it down to, and here's what we can kind of walk through. Also note that unfortunately, those 3 most expensive guys, Morikawa, Victor Hovland, and Matt Wolff, they're not going to show up here because they do not have enough rounds to qualify for PGA Tour stats, unfortunately. But if you want to go, I'll tweet some stuff out, kind of where they would rank in each one of these. As you can imagine, they're all going to be pretty good. I mean, they've only played a handful of tournaments and they've been great in them. So let's kind of look at this from, I really want to drive down to, let's just look at strokes gained total and see who kind of leads the way here. Lucas Glover at $9,800 actually pretty far ahead of the rest of the field in terms of average strokes gained total on the season. Sung Jae at $9,700, same thing. He's second on this list. Those are the only 2 guys averaging a plus stroke per round this year. The rest of the top 5 or top 6 is Lashley, Moore, Streelman, and Ryan Palmer, which is why that Ryan Palmer name jumped out. Someone who is a great approach player, makes a lot of birdies, doesn't make a lot of bogeys, and just gains a lot of strokes. Not seeing him play recently probably pushes his ownership down pretty far. Let's go to strokes gained putting specifically, since that 3-putt avoidance number was so large. And here's where you get a little bit of value. Denny McCarthy at 7,500, who also makes enough birdies in this field. He's actually pretty good at avoiding bogeys. $7,500. Von Taylor is also on this list. Then you get my buddy Wyndham Clark. Then you get Don Buzzelli, Bo Hostler, Martin Pillar to round out the top 6 or so. And then here's that very important 125 to 150 range. So what I decided to do here was to make this the proximity number. So this is actually a distance if you're looking at it. So Don Buzzelli, again, so Buzzelli now checks off a couple of boxes. Putting, 125 to 150, and birdie or better. Unfortunately, he doesn't do a lot else very well, but he does do those 3 things well. So if you're looking for kind of a specialist, only 6,700. Now, let me tell you, this range is chock full of value because the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys and 6 of the top 7 are all under $7,000. So if you think this range is important, which I kind of do, so there's a lot of weeks where this stuff gets really noisy, but this range, because of the way that the course ends up playing, a lot of guys hit it from the same range. So 125 to 150 being that range that a lot of guys hit it from. Additionally, we have a lot of history here at TPC Deere Run. So I tend to lean on what actually pops up out of these more often because we have so much history. So this would be a pretty good range to go find some value if you're looking for it. So those names are Don Buzzelli, Roberto Castro, Tom Hoagie, Josh Teeter. Teeter's been playing well recently, and Stuart Sink are the top 5. And then here's a really interesting one, par 3 birdie or better. So this popped up, which I don't know if we've seen it yet this year, as only 3 courses on the tour is par 3 birdie or better more important. And the guys that show up here are Danny Lee, Cameron Champ, Joel Dahman, Michael Thompson, and Sean Stefani, I believe he pronounces it. Again, some pretty decent mid-tier value there. And then just so we're clear, I will show you the approach numbers because this is strokes gained approach because we don't have the normal Hideki here, right? So Gooch leads the way. Taylor Gooch, 7,700. Nate Lashley, Ryan Moore, if you're willing to forgive. I think I said this last week too. If you're willing to forgive and forget Ryan Moore, his skill set continues to set up for these events. Great, very accurate off the tee, makes enough birdies, hits enough approach shots close. Okay, just saying it. Streelman, Neiman, and again, that Ryan Palmer name shows up. So let's dive deeper into strokes gained here. And I'll kind of show you, because I think this is even more important this week to kind of get an idea of where these guys fall against their peers. So just looking at strokes gained total, Morikawa in only 16 rounds does have the best strokes gained total here. No surprise to see that. Victor Hovland up there, Lucas Glover near the top of his pricing tier, Sung Jae, Charles Howe, and then kind of going down like Nate Lashley, Peter Malnati, Taylor Gooch, Denny McCarthy, Johnny Vegas. Like those are the guys that are leading their tier. Doc Redman in a very small sample, 10 rounds. And then Arjun Atwal in an even smaller sample of 4 rounds lead their respective tiers. Tee to green, probably a little bit better. You get a lot of the same guys. Let me see who else pops up here. Really down towards the bottom, you get more volatile players. So like Cameron Tringale, Dylan Fratelli, Hank Lebioda, those would be guys. Adam Svensson made it into my core last week. Those would be guys that would fall into it. So let's look at this. Speaking of Svensson, the hottest player tee to green in this field in the last 30 days is Adam Svensson. It is not Victor Hovland. It's not Colin Morikawa. Svensson is gaining 2 strokes per round tee to green in the last 30 days. 4 really great rounds at the 3M. That's 5 in a row going back to the Rocket Mortgage Classic. He has not lost since he's lost 1 time in his last 10 rounds. Basically, it was the first round at the Travelers. Otherwise, he's been really, really good. The rest of those guys who are also hot, you get Victor Hovland, Tyrone Von Oswegen, Cameron Tringale, and Martin Laird. And then we'll wrap this up with this stat that I'm really, really high on at the moment, which is trying to find guys that should be putting better than they are. So whether that is they're bad putters, but they're putting really, really bad, or they're good putters and they're putting poorly at the moment or putting average at the moment. So what we're going to do here is we're going to find the biggest difference between players, or the biggest negative difference between a player's 2019 baseline and how they have been putting in the last 30 days. So the guys that you would think should have to come back at some point, the biggest difference is Derek Fathauer, who, let's look at his recent rounds. It's a smaller sample size. Yeah, he just hasn't played enough. I'd probably avoid this. I mean, that's a little noisy. He hasn't played enough. Martin Laird has played a lot more. Okay, this makes sense. So Martin Laird has now lost strokes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Wow. 8 straight rounds. Now, Martin Laird for the season is a small net positive, and he has lost strokes putting 8 straight rounds. That will probably not continue. I might find a way to throw a flyer on Marty Laird, because if he's literally a stroke per round below his season average, if he just gets back to his season average, let alone outpaces his average, there's 4 strokes right there for you. Ollie Snyder-Jans, Chris Stroud, Parker McLaughlin, Russell Henley. Where has he been this year? He's had a really bad run at it. So there's some names on here. This is why Svensson continues to show up in my core, playing extremely well tee to green and playing well below his actual 2019 putting baseline. He's about a half a stroke around, or even more than that, below it. So there you go. Very interesting field this week. The last chance before the Open Championship. Get into the draw for a subscription to DFS on demand. Leave a comment. Make sure you're subscribed. Tell me what the winning score is going to be to par, 25 under, 10 under, whatever you think that's going to be. Or leave a 5-star rating and review on iTunes or Spotify or wherever else you can rate and review the podcast. Follow me on DFSondemand.com on Twitter, and leave a comment below. Talk to you guys soon. Later.